as far as Christ is concerned, if I ever doubted him in any way, in any moment, it all went away at the weirdest point, because you would think when you lose your daughter that you might drop the hardest as far as your relationship with him, and you might question at the most times. But whenever I felt her leave her body and take her last couple of breaths, I guess I felt a weird. I mean, it was obviously a very hard moment, but I felt everything that who she was and the spirit that she was, and everything that was about her, whether her small personality, even after she lost so many abilities, everything that she was after her last couple of breaths was gone. And what was left was her just physical presence here on this earth. And as beautiful as she was, you could just tell that her soul and everything about her was gone and was at a different place at that moment. And I just didn't question it anymore after that. I knew where she was. I knew she was in a better place. As much as I wish I still had her here, my faith has never wavered since that day, knowing that there is something more than this place here.
Welcome to the Light Your Heart with Hope podcast. I'm Erin, and I'm so thankful you're here. Today is the last episode of the first season of our podcast, but we will be back with more, and I am so excited to share more incredible stories with you. My hope and prayer is that through listening to today's episode, God will encourage you and do immeasurably more than all you can ask or imagine. Today, I want to share Kyle and Christin's story. It's a testimony of putting your faith in the hands of Christ in the face of uncertainty. A story of releasing control into the arms of the Father, surrendering the unknown to the one who knows.
We have been together since 8th grade. We started dating in 1999. I don't even know you would call it dating in 8th grade, but we were boyfriend, girlfriend then. And we were together for 10 years before we got married in 2009. During the first years of our marriage, we spent a lot of time just playing sports. We both loved basketball and coached and helped each other. Coached middle and started coaching high school basketball. We both play golf. So we loved doing that together, and just traveling and enjoying being with each other was pretty much how we spent the first years of our marriage.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Between our love of sports, that's kind of what first brought us together. We were both athletes, and that's kind of how we met. And then I didn't grow up in the church, so she was able to help me start my relationship consistently at the church, and we were able to grow through that. And I think that helped me a lot. And we were able to take multiple mission trips and just really experience a lot of good in the world at a young age, and really helped our relationship maintain through the college years, especially when we weren't at the same college. And really just we're able to grow our relationship in a time where I think a lot of other people's might struggle being apart from each other.
So then, probably just short of 5 years of being married, we decided we were ready for kids. And that proved to be a struggle for us. It took us about a year. We originally did get pregnant another time and lost that pregnancy pretty early on. And then we were able to get pregnant with our firstborn, our daughter, Mabry Kate. She was born on March 13th, 2014. It was a very smooth labor, very quick delivery. It was just something that was a huge blessing to me to be able to experience bringing a child into the world. And there was nothing but happiness that day, I remember. And she was beautiful. She weighed 8 pounds even, and passed all her screenings that they do early on when they're first born with flying colors. And her first several checkups we took her to at the doctor, there were no complaints. Everything looked great. So we were really excited to start our new life as parents with her. The first couple months with her was that blissful parenthood where you're enjoying it, but also you're struggling with the sleep and making sure they're fed. And it's exhausting and tiring, but at the same time, it's such a blessing. And I think back on those times, and I'm just so thankful we were able to experience that part of parenting with her.
Yeah, we were new parents, so everything was new to us. We were running off of, I guess, adrenaline, and just those were long nights, especially for her when we first got her. You're new parent, so you're excited, so everything is just amazing. And even though you're always tired, you've always got friends and family coming over to say hey and see her, and they were just as you imagined. She was amazing. She is absolutely beautiful. She had the best smile, best personality, even at a young age. So when things started to get a little bit more difficult, we could really tell, even though we'd only had about 2.5 to 3 healthy months with her, that we could kind of tell, obviously, that something wasn't right whenever she did start to show symptoms. And those symptoms started very small. And so we were just like any new parents, we just want to get her checked out. And we kept thinking that, these were going to be small battles that we would just get past, and that they would continue to, just go away. And so when her first couple of symptoms were, her first one was a UTI, which is common in babies. And so when we went to the hospital, we were obviously scared, but then calmed down once she got past that. Then the next couple months proved to just keep getting a little harder and harder.
Yeah. The most significant symptoms that we experienced early on, of course, was the UTI, which we realized something wasn't right because she quit smiling. But then the biggest thing after that was being able to hold her feeds down. Almost every single time that we fed her, she couldn't hold it down. She might throw it up right after feeding, or it could have been 2 hours later. And it was concerning because it was projectile and just huge amounts, so much so that she started to lose weight. I remember at her 4-month checkup, she weighed the same thing she weighed at her 2-month checkup. So that was really concerning to the doctors, and of course concerning to us. She was admitted to the hospital a couple times. The longest stay that she had was a 17-day stay at our local children's hospital, and they ran so many different tests on her. Like, I don't even remember how many blood tests, scans. They even did a muscle biopsy under anesthesia, and everything came back inconclusive. And at first, we would find relief in that, knowing that these things were coming up negative. But then the further we got into it, the doctors let us know how concerning that was, because there was something going on and they couldn't pinpoint it. And there are just so many different issues that just they couldn't really piece together for us. We visited so many different specialists and, like I said, a couple different hospital stays where no one could tell us anything. They were just sort of treating the symptoms as they were, but that wasn't really solving the problem. So our pediatrician recommended getting a second opinion elsewhere. And this struggle was months and months of just her continuing to deteriorate and us having no answers and not knowing how to help her. And I would say probably the most stressful and the most painful thing to see her go through was just what we then learned was nerve pain, because she would just scream out. And it was just a different type of scream that you just knew it wasn't a hungry type scream or just a upset scream. It was, I'm in a lot of pain type of scream. And the only time that we could soothe her was in our arms. When she was in our arms, that was when she was the most calm. So I feel like we were losing a lot of sleep then, and she was losing sleep. And she was in so much pain. And it wasn't until we went to Cincinnati that we figured out exactly what was wrong. So.
Yeah. So the trip to Cincinnati was great because the team up there were able to take a look together at everything that they had already tested for here locally and then ruled out everything else and were able to narrow it down pretty much from the get-go. I mean, from where we had spent at least a good 2.5 to 3 months here locally bouncing between doctors, they were able to look at her in one day and pretty much rule out and see that it was going to be, something maybe a little bit more serious. At that point in time, we still thought, hey, this could be something that, something minor. And I guess that's the cruel part about the disease is, especially at this age, it presented itself in a lot of different ways of which babies normally have trouble, whether it be trouble feeding or whether it be acid reflux or something. It could have just been anything. So I think a lot of the doctors here just spent so much time thinking it would just be the normal thing that they would run into and that maybe another doctor would, see something that they didn't. I remember getting a call. He let us know the diagnosis, and it was just the worst day of my life because I was alone whenever I got the call. And they had obviously told us at the hospital as a doctor, hey, don't look up these things when you leave here, that these are some possibilities of what they could be. Well, I mean, you just can't tell that to a parent, especially one of us. So the first thing we did when we got in the car was try to look up something about what it could be. And they thought it might be a leukodystrophy or anything like that. So we're looking up those words, and they're the first time we ever heard them, and we're terrified the entire 4-hour ride home from Cincinnati. But we prayed, we hoped, and we just kept asking the Lord for healing before we got the diagnosis. But the day that they called and said that she had Krabbe, I think I received the call a little bit afternoon, and she got home about 3:30 in the afternoon. And those 3.5 hours, I wanted to tell her earlier, but just trying to figure out a way to tell my wife that our daughter had terminal illness was the hardest thing that I had ever had to do, and something that we had just never, ever let our mind go to as a possibility. And so that day was a very dark day for a couple that, in the big picture hadn't experienced a lot of hurt before.
I just remember coming home from work. As a teacher, I always have stories to tell, whether it's about students or something that happened. And I just remember opening the door, walking in, just telling them all about it. It took me a minute to realize that he wasn't really, you could just see a look on his face. He wasn't really with me in that conversation. And I remember him telling me, I remember not knowing exactly what disease he was talking about. The biggest thing that stuck out in my mind was the time, the age, that we could not expect to see her live past the age of 2. And all that we could do was keep her comfortable. There wasn't anything to help her. I remember the mention of a transplant and how that could help, but it couldn't help her. It just, none of it made sense in my mind. And I immediately was just questioning, like, why can't she have that? Why? Like, if it helps, why can't it? Just none of it made any sense to me. When I tell people about how God is a part of our story, like, I saw him and felt him so many times in the hospital with Mabry, but I feel like one of the most significant lessons that he taught me, and it's something you hear growing up, but I don't feel like I truly ever understood it till that moment when I was told there was nothing I could do for my daughter, was that we have no control over our lives. Like, God is the one that is in full control, has everything already worked out for the good of those that love him, even though it was really hard to see, like, why he was doing that in that moment. That was the first time I just remember feeling like I truly have zero control over this situation. There's absolutely nothing I can do to help my daughter. And I just remember feeling that. I remember being on the floor crying, and just, that's all I could think about was what could I do to save her? And there was literally nothing that I could do.
Yeah, I think any human, wants to have control over everything, or it's really tough to give that up and realize that that you don't have a certain grasp on things that you wish that you did, and it's tough to put your trust and your faith in something completely without knowing that you don't have any control over it. And I think that's hard, and that's an everyday battle to give up the control of a certain situation, especially of your child's future and the plan that you have for them versus the creator of all things, who has an entirely different plan. And so I think that's just something I struggled with for a long time. And his plan wasn't my plan, and we weren't seeing eye to eye, and it was hard. And I questioned him. And you have conversations with him on your own, questioning everything that he's doing, and want to see answers right away. And you find yourself in those situations just lost. And there was a lot of times where, the picture really wasn't clear as to what he was doing. And I guess you could still say that today. I feel like we have a better grasp on some of the things and our relationships with him. But I still think that we're still learning to trust in him in certain ways.
After we got her diagnosis, some things became a little bit easier because now we knew where the pain was coming from and how we could keep her comfortable. And then as far as the reflux, getting that under control. And so things became easier in that sense. But it took us a couple weeks to really come to our senses about what we were going through. And it was hard for me to go back to work, but it was kind of one of those things that as a family, like I had to do that to be able to provide. And I'm a teacher and a high school basketball coach. And so a lot of my time was spent in the gym and in the classroom. And I had to kind of continue that. And I remember talking about with him, we just kind of reminisced on all the things that we said we wanted to do with our kids once we had kids. Like we couldn't wait to have them and to have them in the gym and have all these high school girls to look up to and grow up playing ball in the gym and building those relationships. And so we just looked at each other and decided like we still wanted to do that. We still wanted to get her out of the house and take her to practice and take her to our games and do all the things with her that we always said we were going to do. With whatever amount of time we had left, we wanted to do that. So we did. And I would say following the diagnosis is when we just felt so much love. And we know it was the hands and feet of Jesus, from family and friends, but also just people we didn't even know, just in the community, just rallying together, like doing things for us that we could never even imagined. And it was so overwhelming to have the amount of support that we had. When Mabry was with us, people would drop meals off at our house or come pick up a load of laundry and do our laundry. And we came home one time and our house was decorated for the fall, and for Halloween there were pumpkins and just different, like a hay bale and just different decorations on I still don't know to this day who did that, but just T-shirts were created, money was donated. And then probably my favorite part of the story was opposing teams, because high school basketball around here is a pretty big deal. And I remember we were playing it's a really well-known rivalry around here. It's another school that's just down the same road as the one our school is on. And their colors are red and white. And they came out in blue shirts, which is the awareness color for Crabbe. And we support Mabry Kate on the shirts. And the team came out and ran out and did their warm up in those shirts. And we were just so overwhelmed with gratitude that people would surround us in such a way and show so much love in the way that they did. And it just continued after that game. It was like every game we played, every opponent that we had T-shirts made in support of Mabry to just show us that they were praying and that they cared about our family. And then it got to where at halftime at certain schools, they would talk about Crabbe and kind of raise awareness for that, pass around a bucket for donations. There were tables at different schools for donations. And then we started getting support in trying to pass a law in Tennessee. And I really think that that's what helped us along the way. I know that the Mays and the Measles did a lot of that footwork before us, or a lot of the legwork before us, but it just started raising awareness about Crabbe, about Mabry, about our struggles, but also about how future children's lives could be saved if this were on newborn screening in Tennessee. And so we would go, I remember we went to one school and they did the halftime thing, and then they passed around little slips of paper with the website on it that they could go to sign the petition to get Crabbe added to the newborn screening in Tennessee. So it was so overwhelming. We just felt so much love from the community during that time. So
the decision to live life as normal as we could. I mean, I think when you're faced with that decision, there's no right or wrong answer that you can do as a family. You do what you think is best. And we thought what was best for us was to live as normal as we could, to show her what her life here would be like with us. And so anybody that would have made any different decision, there's no wrong decision in that time. You handle it the best way that you can. And for us, that was our decision. And looking back, you could kind of see that was God talking through us, because the amount of awareness that was able to come through that short amount of time was just overwhelming, not only for the support for our family, but the community as a whole that we're blessed to live in was huge. Our friends, family, church family, really put their arms around us and lifted us up during that time. And just the amount of support we were able to get for the bill that we were trying to get and work with the Mays and the Measles and trying to get that law passed in Tennessee, I think was a big part. And the platform of being able to coach a high school sport at that time just helped gain attention for that specific disease. I feel like people as a whole really rallied around us in the disease and came together and tried to get something passed and really helped in that journey. And unfortunately, that journey led all the way up until Mabry's final days. I think it was right around the end of our season is when she started to get a little worse. And I don't know if it was just the time of the year, that January, February, those cold months were always a little bit more difficult. It's just colder outside. It's easier to catch, a certain cold or whatever that might be a little harder for our kids to get past, obviously. And so that kind of led up until the final days we had with her.
It was a Saturday, and they were supposed to go to a father-daughter dance. And so I know that Kyle had left to pick up like corsages and her dress and his suit and those kinds of things. And I remember he dropped her outfit off and went to steam because his dad had a steamer down the road. And I gave her a bath and I painted her fingernails and I had just put her dress on and put her headband on. And right as I put her headband on was when it all started to happen. And it was like she couldn't catch her breath and her eyes were huge, like she was terrified. And her face was just so many different shades of gray and purple and blue. And I did everything that I knew to do, and it just wasn't enough. And I called Kyle and he came flying home, and my parents were already on their way over to take pictures, and my sister and her husband were on their way too. So they kind of walked into the chaos that was taking place. And I just remember my mom walking in with a smile on her face, but immediately it changed. And she immediately went to action because she's a nurse. And so she was trying everything that she could. And Kyle came and was trying everything that he could. I remember we always tried to avoid the hospital as much as we could. We would try to intervene on our own as much as we could with just some bad experiences that we had. But when we finally decided that we needed help, I remember trying to dial 911, but I was shaking so crazily that I couldn't even put my fingers on the numbers on the phone. And I remember my dad grabbing the phone from me and doing that for me. So we had to call the ambulance to come try to help.
Yeah, she had a few apneic episodes before at this point, so it wasn't anything extremely new to us. You as any parent that has gone through this, and you kind of figure out what their baseline was, and they would have these apneic episodes, or she would, and then you would be able to, whether it was through suction or whether it was through just a certain amount of time that they would hold the breath, they would always come back to that baseline. And they were just horrifying moments that their oxygen levels would drop, and they were scary. And she had those before, and she would come back, but this one was obviously different. And so after our multiple attempts to try to get her back to her baseline is when the ambulance and everything like that were called, and they were great. They showed up within minutes. They were able to get her back breathing at a very small amount, enough to where they thought that things could still, that she could still come back. And so we rushed to the hospital. All these things happening at one time, things feel like they're moving 100 miles an hour. And just all you can think about is just getting her back and getting her back to her baseline, and we can get past this. And so we get to the hospital room, and it had just been too long. She was still laboring extensively. Her breaths were very few and far between. And at that point in time, they had done everything that they could.
We had signed a DNR early on, because we decided when we were of sound mind and just on a normal day that we would rather her have a quality life than worry about how long and extensive her life was. But when you're in that moment and you really you want to do everything that you can to save her, I was just begging and pleading for them to just override that. And I just remember my mom pulling me aside and reminding me why we signed that and what that meant for her, and just kind of talking me down from that. And so there were so many just decisions that had to be made that you never expect to make with a 10-month-old child. So that was so hard.
I think any parent in that situation, you're just not, you're there physically, but you're so far, kind of like an out of body experience. Like you just never imagined having to make those decisions. And I don't think there is a right answer. I think it's whatever you feel that you've talked about with your spouse at that time to do, and to handle it that way. And this is the way that we chose to handle it and move forward. And so over the next couple of hours, we had a lot of friends and family there, and they were able to kind of take turns coming in to say their final goodbyes, things that you just never imagined having to do. We had a lot of amazing family and friends that were able to come in and pray with us and just be with us for a short amount of time. And then we were able to kind of have our final moments, and we had our dance because we were supposed to be at a dance that night. And so we had our playlist that we listened to on a regular to kind of relax her. And we just ended up going through with our dance there at the hospital in her final moments. And and holding her and doing our own thing there. And as far as Christ is concerned, if I ever doubted him in any way, um, in any moment, it all went away at the weirdest point, because you would think when you lose your daughter that you might drop the hardest, as far as your relationship with him, and you might question at the most times. But whenever I felt her leave her body and take her last couple of breaths, I guess I felt a weird, I mean, it was obviously a very hard moment, but I felt everything that who she was and the spirit that she was, and everything that was about her, whether her small personality, even after she lost so many abilities, everything that she was after her last couple of breaths was gone. And what was left was her just physical presence here on this earth. And as beautiful as she was, you could just tell that her soul and everything about her was gone and was at a different place at that moment. And I just didn't question it anymore after that. I knew where she was. I knew she was in a better place, obviously. And as much as I wish I still had her here, I just knew us as people. And, I'd never been next to anybody with a loss of life and been able to see it go. But seeing who they are leave their body and just was huge as an impact on me. And my faith has never wavered since that day, knowing that there is something more than this place here. And I was able to take that and use it as a moment in my life that has made a big difference for me.
In the midst of trying to figure out what was wrong with Mabry, I remember being in, we were waiting for some kind of x-ray to be taken of Mabry. Mm-hmm. And I remember him sitting down to talk to me like, hey, I've been thinking about this, which was crazy because I'd been thinking about it too. He was like, I really, I don't think that we were planning on having any more kids anytime soon anyway, but, we got to figure this out with her, because we never let our minds go that we were going to lose Mabry. We knew that something was wrong and that we knew that we would work through it, and that she would need our undivided attention.
As elated as we were the first time to hear that we're pregnant with Mabry, and it was a whole to-do to tell our family and how excited we were. When we found out we were pregnant with Owen, it was right before we actually got her diagnosis. And it was just the complete opposite of just shock and terror and just fear of,
it was
what all this was.
18 days before her diagnosis that we found out we were pregnant, and I cried. I was on birth control, and we had been just preoccupied with what was happening with Mabry. And like he said, we still had no answers. And then all of a sudden it's like, bam, now we're pregnant. And we had just talked about not, and it just blew our minds. I don't know if this was just my conscience or if God gave me this inkling, but as soon as I found out I was pregnant, I was terrified that meant something was wrong with Mabry that was going to take her from me. So I felt like God was almost gifting me Owen because Mabry was going to leave us soon. Fast forward a couple weeks later when we did get her diagnosis, and along with that diagnosis came the information that it was genetic and that this child that we were now pregnant with could also have it. And so that was devastating. And I think we both clung to hope that nothing was going to be wrong with this baby. But it was 3 months exactly. We found out Mabry's diagnosis on September 19th of 2014, and it was December 19th of 2014. We had Owen tested in utero and were able to find out that he did, in fact, also have Krabbe disease. So our world was turned upside down again. But we knew that there was hope. And I think that immediately gave us a vision of the purpose behind, part of the purpose behind Mabry's life was to bring us awareness so that we could help Owen. At least that made us feel better to think about it that way. So once we found out that he had it, we immediately started getting in contact with Dr. Kurtzberg at Duke and trying to figure out what that would look like and what we needed to have in place leading up to that. And that was also overwhelming because, I had said when Mabry was diagnosed, we heard transplant. We didn't know what that meant. Well, now we had to learn what that meant. And what that meant was just up and leaving everything at home to go try to save his life. And it could be months that we were away from our home. And so that was also just another blow, like just trying to figure out, because we fully expected to have Mabry with us, and what was her care going to look like? And did we need to sell our house? If not, how are we going to take care of that? And it was just a lot of things to try to piece together in order to bring Owen into the world and give him the best chance at life that we could.
Life didn't stop. It only got more complicated. That was December when we found out. And then Mabry passed in February. Our plans were to move to Duke and take her with us. And at the end of March, and everything got sped up at that point in time after she passed. It was just like we had our time to, obviously to have our arrangements for Mabry, but it just didn't slow down. It was just, less than a month later, we're packing up and moving to go into a whole nother world of this journey with bringing in another child with Krabbe, but with the possibility of a transplant. And so it was just everything revamped. I feel like it was just a whole nother set of fears, a whole nother set of just terror because we had just lost our child a month before. And now we're going to try to fight for this, for Owen's life. And so you almost didn't have time to grieve completely. We're now finding out 7-8 years down the road that grief never goes away, and we're still dealing with it. And not that we would have ever had the appropriate time to grieve, but at that time, looking back, it kept us, you hear that grief comes in waves. And if you don't keep treading water, that's the one that just hits home with me the most. Because if you don't keep treading water, you'll drown in your grief and your depression. And at that time, I feel like that's what we were doing. We were treading water every day, fighting for Owen and going through the daily battle with him. And it's what got us through those months where we might have just been sitting at home staring at a wall and, maybe got lost in it too much. And so those next couple months were spent at Duke.
Like several months.
Yeah, next several months, next 9 months we're spent at Duke. And a whole new battle with Owen and his journey in this life. And it's amazing. You could go on for days talking about everything that happened there. And that's a whole nother podcast and for a whole nother day. To keep it short and sweet. He had many, many obstacles going through transplant. So many you can't name them. And the kid just never gave up. And luckily we were only 5.5, 6 hours away from home. But it felt like we never left with the community that we had back here, helping us, support us. We were able to keep our home. We were able to still see loved ones that were able to make that drive and come surround us as often as they could.
And then being there so long, you become friends with the other families whose children are going there for the same treatment for different things. In the 9 months we were there, we became close with several families, and 7 of those families lost their child during transplant. And that was tough too, because those families would want us to pray with them or confide in us because we had lost a child, and we wanted to do that for them. But at the same time, our kid was going through the exact same thing with that theirs just passed away from. So then that fear would creep in. It was just so much. Like, I just can't even explain like the number of medications and transfusions and different things going into his IV pole. Couldn't even question what the nurses were doing because I couldn't even keep up with all the things that were going in. I remember just sitting in that chair, just feeling, I just have to trust this. There is a reason that Owen's here. There's a reason that we're here fighting for him. There's a reason these nurses are here. God has put all these people in these places for a reason. And I'm just going to trust that everything is going the right way. It's going like it should. And it was really, really hard. It was a completely different battle than what we faced with Mabry, but equally as hard to go through. I think it was 110 days that his first 110 days of life were spent actually in the hospital. And then they discharged us, which was exciting. They kind of just do it to give you a little sense of normalcy, but you still have to report to clinic daily. The next 4 or so months were spent visiting back and forth to clinic until they felt like he was well enough to be able to spend weekends away. So we started with long weekends going to Tennessee, which was really exciting. But we'd have to come back for the next week. And then it just started dwindling even more to where eventually we could just go home and we could stay home. So that was really exciting. He came home. He was born in March of 2015, and we came home with him November in 2015. We're so thankful for giving Owen the chance at life, because we can't imagine our lives without him. I just get like so giddy thinking about how happy he makes both of us. And I know several people that see him on a daily basis, and his life is just so full of joy. And he does have limitations as far as like physically. He can't walk on his own, but it just doesn't seem to.
It doesn't matter.
It doesn't matter. It doesn't seem to bother him. He can go and be with a group of kids that are running and playing things that we wish that we could see him do, but I just don't see or hear him complaining about wishing he could do those things. He's just always just happy, and we just can't imagine life without him. Like, the battle that we went through was tough and dark and seemed like it was never end, but where we are now on the other side of it, we're so thankful for that. So now he's 7, and he's just finished up kindergarten. Today he got a math award, and then they called it the Sunshine Award because they said he brightens up any room that he walks in. He plays t-ball. He's doing all kinds of things, just living life like a happy kindergartner, almost first grader. And we're happy to be following along and watching him grow into the little boy that we love so much.
He is truly amazing. As a parent, I feel like your fears will never go away. So for us to sit here and say that we don't fear anything for him is completely false. I think that's just parenthood in general. That's stuff that we're still learning every day, and putting our trust in God. It's a daily battle. It's not anything that is per se easy for us. And I still think we fully do it. And it's a lot easier than it used to be. Every day, he just makes it 10 times easier, just looking into his smile and seeing how happy he is. And, any fear that we have for him melts away every day when he wakes up, and with the attitude that he has. If you just stay in the moment the best you can, and you continue to trust his plan every day, you quickly learn that he has this huge plan for you that keeps impacting lives around you. And you can see it every day if you just stop and you look at it.
I think that's one of the biggest lessons, learning that God is in control. That was lesson number 1, but starting with Mabry, and now even today with Owen, like he said, is just to live each day and not look too far ahead, because we can sit here and say that transplant's not a cure and Owen's future is uncertain, but isn't everyone's future uncertain? So we try not to look too far ahead. We just try to look, like he said, at today, what's going on today, and then take each day and, make the most out of each day that we have with him. And I think that that is a beautiful lesson that we've learned through all of this. And like he said, it's not like fears don't creep in and we don't think about what could happen years down the road or this or that or the other. But I feel like for the most part, we both really try to encourage each other to see today for what it is and make the most of it in the moment.
I feel like anytime we got ahead of ourselves and tried to plan things, he was quick to remind us that, hey, slow down. I've got this for you. And, just keep going every day, and things will always work out the way he intends it to. there's things that happen on a daily basis that people don't see, and it's never easy. I don't want to put forward the fact that it's all easy, but it's just about the individual choices that you make and how you choose to look at things that I feel like help us on a daily basis. I mean, it's just everybody's built differently. And I think the hardest thing in life is to believe in something that's bigger than you. And it's not hard to believe in yourself as much as it is to really believe in something bigger. And I think that's really hard to put your complete faith in something that you can't necessarily see on a daily basis. So for us, just giving up that control of our life was the biggest thing for us.
And still is.
Yes, on the daily. Yeah. We know so many people through this journey that we've met that have impacted our life, especially you and the people at Hunter's Hope, and that they're a big part of this journey, and they're a big part of the positivity that surrounds this family, and that we wouldn't be in the situation that we are in now without those resources. So the things that you guys are continuing to do, we are very blessed to have found you guys and the calling that was put upon you and your family. We hope that you see on your daily battles of how hard it is for you guys and the things that you come across, how big that impact is. And we hope that you feel that love that we feel every day, because you're fulfilling that journey and that calling, and we appreciate it so much.
Kyle and Christin's story amazes me. Their faith in the sovereignty of God encourages me to trust that God goes before us and is with us in any and every circumstance. In the midst of all of the unknowns, Kyle and Christin look to the God who knows, the one whose plans and purposes will always prevail. And no matter what we face, we can lean on the God who works all things together for the good of those who love him and are called according to his purpose, a purpose that cannot be thwarted, a purpose that points to Jesus. To learn more about Kyle and Christin Webb's story, check out the show notes.